Back in 2009, I shot a little video on installing an N-pin jack in an acoustic guitar. The technique I used worked okay, but since then I've learned of a much better way. So first, let's look at the construction of an N-pin jack, the various pieces involved, and why and how we deal with the pieces involved. So this is an N-pin jack for an acoustic guitar, and it's got quite a few pieces to it. Back here, this cover hides whatever's going on at the point of connection between the wires inside the guitar and the jack. It could be just a simple solder connection, or there could be preamp parts or EQ, network, whatever. But anyway, it's going to be inside this barrel. And this barrel is threaded onto a fairly large area here. And this distance from these washers to this nut is the spacing of the tail block inside the acoustic guitar. So this has to be adjusted correctly to tighten onto that tail block and not let the jack spin, turn, twist. That's bad because that'll tie up your wires and eventually wreck the inside of the guitar. But it has to be tight enough so that it holds, but not too tight so that you can tighten the nuts down. You got that? It'll be a little bit more obvious later. But let's take this piece off. This is the little collar that the strap attaches to. This is the strap part of the strap button. And then we have this smaller threaded area here, smaller than this large part here. It has a hole in it that's useful under certain circumstances, but we have a new technique that doesn't require the use of this hole that I'll show you in a minute. Back in my original video on how to install a strap jack in an acoustic guitar, this hole played a critical part. Then these guys here, this nut and this washer, is how you tighten the jack into the block. So it's the depth of the tail block should be from here to here, and then this washer and nut tightens onto that and holds it in place. So we're also going to look at how you can measure the depth of the tail block to get this distance correct from here to here. But that's the construction of an acoustic guitar N-pin jack. So now that you see how an N-pin jack is constructed, you can see what we have to do to get it to be fastened into the guitar. We need to pull it in from inside, tighten, and then tighten the nut on this smaller shoulder to hold the N-pin jack in place. And we need the distance from here to the end of that shoulder to be correct to match the depth of the N-pin block, the N block in the acoustic guitar, so that we don't leave it loose, which would allow the jack to spin and mess up the wiring. We don't need it too tight because then we wouldn't be able to get the nut onto the end where it needs to be and pull the jack tight. So it needs to be the right distance from here to here. The trick for learning to measure that distance is to take a nice stiff little piece of wire. This is a guitar string. I think it's an A string, you know, the 5th string. Easy to bend, but stiff enough to hold its shape. So we put a little bend in that, stick it through the hole, and then pull it back until it stops. Now that's the depth of the end pin block right there. Bend it again, and now we can use this to measure the depth, and we've got it just right. I may have already done this, who knows? I might be cheating, but anyway, that's how we can measure the depth of the end pin block and adjust this jam nut and the shell to the right depth. So now we're ready to stick the 1/4 inch dowel. Oh, I forgot to say, the wonderful thing that I learned was to use a 1/4 inch dowel to maneuver the end pin jack rather than a piece of wire. And it's good for 2 reasons. For one thing, it gives us a lot of control. We no longer have to worry about the end pin jack rattling around inside the guitar. But we take stick the jack in the hole there, stick the dowel through the end pin hole, and jam it in there, and now we can pull the jack back to where we need it. So now the end pin jack is right there, and it's ready to be fastened down. So this washer, and this nut will easily go over the 1/4 inch dowel, and we can tighten. If we don't cross thread it, we can tighten this nut down. Come on. Thank you. Tighten this nut down and hold it in place with this dowel and tighten it with this wrench. And you could use a pair of pliers, you could use a crescent wrench, you could use whatever kind of wrench you have, because you're no longer constrained by the width available to you to tighten that nut. So we have now installed the end pin jack in this acoustic guitar. I think that's pretty slick. This is a rather inexpensive piece of equipment. I think $1, $2, maybe $5 on a bad day. You could actually get 2 of these sticks. It would be twice this long when I bought mine. And it really makes it easier to install an end pin jack. So if you're fooling around putting pickups in your guitar and changing pickups and so on, definitely something that you need in your equipment drawer. Yeah, I hope you found that useful.